Okay, I don't know whether this is 5, 10, 20 tips on how to improve your chi style or things to help you improve your chi style. But whatever the number is, just bear with me here. A lot of times when we chi style, I think that the number one thing that people have problems deciphering or figuring out is what is the definition of relax? Okay? Would you say that would be a good? Everyone's got their own interpretation of what relax is. Think of it this way. Wing Chun relax is often misinterpreted, meaning that when you roll, you gotta be so limp and loose and relaxed that it feels like there's nothing there. Okay? How we do it is not that same way. If you think everything, in other words, just look how I stand. I could be, this is my relaxed stance. Alright? Like I'm sloshing, like this. Or I could be like this. This is a direct stance. Alright, direct stance, here. Or I can just be here, in a natural stance. Okay? That's what you're going for. What natural is. Okay? How to naturally hold a technique. How to naturally hold your stance. The minimum amount of muscle necessary to do it. In other words, perfect example. Water, okay? Imagine me doing, let's say, kama, or let's say bar style. Let's say bar. Alright, I'm doing bar style. Now, if I do bar style, and let's say all of a sudden my bar style is I'm so relaxed, look at my bar style, and then all of a sudden he punches a little, and then it looks like I can deflect it because my technique is so relaxed. But that's because we're practicing it in school, okay? That means both you and your partner are agreed upon to dance. He's not going to pound on you and you're not going to pound on him. So I'm so relaxed, he punches, I can deflect the bomb, or my bomb can deflect that punch. If he actually, without killing me, puts muscle and I'm relaxed, it's just going to go through you. That's why a lot of times people who are so relaxed in Chun just get pummeled because they don't know how to hold structure. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum is tension. All of a sudden, I'm going to use my bomb style as a muscle. I'm holding it. He punches it here, but I can hold it. Looks like I'm holding it. Well, the problem with that is if the guy is 50 pounds bigger, and here's your bomb style that you're holding the muscle, and he muscles towards it, he can push you off that too. Okay? So that's one. That's too relaxed, too tight, and then if you have bomb style the regular way, just the natural way, is just the right amount to hold it in order to do the technique. In other words, he punches towards it, I can still hold that technique. So it's like here, you take this water bottle, okay? This is the amount of force I need to hold this water bottle. See how I'm not destroying the bottle, it's still intact. Now if it's too relaxed, I won't be able to hold the bottle, it'll just fall out of my hand. If it's too tight, I'm using muscle to actually hold the bottle. The right technique to hold the bottle is just the necessary amount to do it. Just this amount holds the bottle. And if you think of it in that terms, as far as how to do Tan, Bomb, Pak style, and so forth, that's how you basically determine, am I using structure or am I using muscle? Okay? Some of the hints as far as usually with muscle. Muscle is more common than being too relaxed, especially amongst men who practice Wing Chun, is if you do use muscle, alright, for example, you tighten up your area wherever. If he pushes in and you use muscle here, automatically he starts getting that wave effect as far as him overpowering if you really put some up in it, is if he puts a little muscle into it, you'll feel it right here in your shoulder. Any of your techniques. If so, let's say you chi style for 5-10 minutes and you're like, smashing everything around and everything looks great and you're in a ball of sweat and then you feel your shoulders sore from a great workout. Well, to me that's not Wing Chun. You can call it Wing Chun, but basically that's muscle. You're developing muscle. And if the guy's bigger than you, and eventually in the end, I would say you lose from that. Okay? So, tip number one is, hopefully that explains it, is you have to know how to hold the technique. One holding it the right way without using muscle. A second thing, besides relaxation, is the whole concept of this forward energy. Okay, let's talk about forward energy. Forward energy, let's Let's see. This way explain. Let's say he's holding the technique, okay? Let's say I go like this. Alright, forward energy is like, let's say, see how my technique's holding, he's pushing against it? Now all of a sudden he moves his hand out of the way, and bam! Wow, my hand is pulled into him, because that's forward energy. Actually, that's not forward energy, that's just you pushing against somebody using muscle. Okay? In other words, holding structure. What does holding structure mean? Holding structure is, if you can interpret this first, if I do forward energy, let's say I'm doing forward energy, I'm actually holding my technique onto this chair. If Ken moves the chair, well, I move forward, that's forward energy. You know? Well, actually you just fell over and your hand moved uncontrolled. Remember, the whole purpose is to control your body, control your technique. So if my hand is here, and he pulls it out of the way, see, I still have control of my technique. Right? That's the difference. Okay? Just because your hands are springing forward does not make it forward energy. That's you basically blocking yourself. In other words, if I'm here, okay, my hand is ready to shoot forward. He moves his box out of the way, oh, cool, my hands are just going to snap right away. Well, if I'm moving this way, and he guides me off the center, and then he moves out of the way, well, guess what? I'll go that way too. Because I don't have control of that technique. That's my so-called forward energy. Forward energy is, I hold my technique, okay? That means if he removes it out of the way, I can control whether or not to punch it. I'm not following the pattern going like this. And following the pattern based off his force. That's not forward energy, okay? Basics? Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the chi sao. How much time? Okay. Number one thing to practice with the chi sao first is do not neglect the stance. In other words, a lot of times people are here and then they start rolling, and then they're just rolling like this and they're all happy and so forth. But one of the guys is leaning backwards, another guy is leaning forward. Make sure you have the center. Okay? See how he basically, here's a lean, here's a forward, here's my center, and now all of a sudden I'm rolling, and now actually working on my rolling. Okay? So one, be aware of your stance. Don't neglect the stance. Okay? Two, the reality is you can't really multitask in Chun. In other words, when you're training, it seems like you can do this and that and concentrate on this technique and develop this ability. In reality, you can only work on one thing at a time and build upon that. In other words, if you're not too good with the roll and your rolling is all out here and you want to work on the stance, then work on the stance. Make sure you're centered, and your roll will be ugly in the beginning. But, obviously, you can only work on one thing at a time. You can't be like, well, here's my stance, here's my roll, and here's my sticking ability. Everything's going to come out rosy. It's not. You just can't. You can't concentrate too much on multitasking developmental techniques. Pick one. If you want to work on the roll, work on the roll. If you want to work on the stance, work on the stance while you roll, but just concentrate on that one technique, okay? Second thing, okay? Have a stop and go motion with your rolling. Okay? Don't roll it. Don't go continuous rolling. No, don't go. Okay? A technique has a beginning and an end to it. Okay? In other words, when you do ta dao, here's the end of the ta. When you do bar sao, here's the end of the bar. When you do fu sao, here's the end of your fu. If you don't know the beginning and end of each technique, well, it looks like you're doing good. He's wavering around with this, but the guy actually goes wrong. You actually don't have the end structure of actually applying that bar sao, ta sao, or fu sao. So you got to know exactly when the beginning and end is. Now the question is, well, how fast do I go? Well, just like driving, go at the speed that you can control it. If you can only drive 30 miles an hour, drive 30 miles an hour. In other words, if you're a beginner and you're rolling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that feels good to you, that's perfectly fine. Take it in baby steps. Do it at a certain amount that you can actually handle. Okay? Don't think fast is so important. Fast is not that important. It really isn't. Okay? You want to develop the proper motion to actually develop the structure for doing everything that you have. Okay?